Welcome to the program. Here we go. News today. The Vols with a new commitment with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Will do, Goop.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
A commitment in May is nothing new anymore, so we shall discuss what the Vols picked up in a micro-Asian, not a Polo-Asian, but a micro-Asian. I think it's pretty much the same thing. It's like saying Powell and Carnes, I think. Maybe. But Tennessee picks up a big commitment. We'll discuss him. Is Josh Heupel vindictive? I think maybe taking a questionable 3-star out of Oklahoma where he has ties. We'll discuss with Jimmy Hyams, who joins us on each and every Wednesday. Who deserves more credit for the NIL collective? Alex Golish says it's Josh Heupel, not Danny White, not the Spire group. Do we believe that? Maybe. I think it's interesting nevertheless. Also, our countdown continues. We're at James Pierce. Where does he rank in the top players, the most important players for Tennessee's upcoming season? James Pierce comes in. Caleb at?
He comes in at number 3, and I'm glad you're asking me how I'm doing today, Dave.
Yes, I'm glad you're doing well. So I can't imagine who would be number 1. Maybe we'll discuss that tomorrow. It might rhyme with Rico, Uncle Rico. Also,
well, we still have number 2. You know that number 2 is between 3 and 1, right, Dave?
I'm sorry, I forgot 2. So we got 2. One's going to be Rico. I feel rhymes with Rico. I feel pretty confident about that. Also, Tyler Barron ends up in Miami, not the Dolphins. It looks like a desperate move for both. And we'll get to more about Tennessee's offensive line commitment that they picked up over the weekend. Jimmy Hyams joins us now. Jimmy's presence is brought to you by our good friends at Varner Ford in Clinton. We certainly appreciate them. And Jimmy, how are you, sir?
Dave, I'm doing great. Caleb, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Jimmy?
Good.
So, Jimmy, we'll get rolling here. And I texted you a couple of the topics, and it was vindictiveness. Do you think Josh Heupel is vindictive? And I do not mean that in a negative sense whatsoever.
I guess it depends on your definition of vindictive. I don't know if there are any examples that you were thinking about when I saw what you sent me. I do think that he's got a burr up his saddle about Oklahoma firing him. And I think that means a lot to him. I think he's still probably upset with Bob Stoops for firing him as the offensive coordinator, yet Stoops kept his brother as the defensive coordinator. So is there a pretty good elephant memory in Heupel's brain about that one? I would say yes. Other than that, I don't know of any other examples where I would say, hey, he's been vindictive about this or that.
Yeah, and Caleb, I want you to jump in here. But what I was referring to was the most recent commitment. And I'm not going to pretend to be a guy that can break down players like an NFL scout. But they do take a 3-star out of Oklahoma. I'm not sure if you've heard about him yet. I know that you're semi-retirement. You're pretty up to date. But he is a guy that maybe will be a great player, but Antoni Cade Ogamora happens to be from Oklahoma. And Tennessee is also in on several other players from Oklahoma. How much do you think Josh Heupel would like to steal that state of some of its best talent?
Oh, I think he'd love to go in there and get some of his best talent. I don't know if a 3-star ranks in that regard, and I'll say this too. Tennessee in the past has had a pretty decent number of players from Oklahoma that have joined the program. Robert Meacham is one of the more notable ones they've had, but they've had pretty good offensive linemen and some others, another good receiver. But I think if he could go into Oklahoma and steal a couple of good prospects, that would be very meaningful to him because I think this, I don't know it. I would say there's no love lost between Heupel and Stoops. I don't know necessarily about the University of Oklahoma because a lot of the characters that were there when Heupel was fired are not there anymore. But do I think he'd like to pilfer some really good recruits out of Oklahoma? Absolutely.
So, Jimmy, I'm going to push back where you say that's the only example, though, because I feel like Josh Heupel in 2021 and 2022 made a personal point to hang 60 on Missouri because they didn't hire him as head coach after they got rid of Barry Odom. Do you think that was just him running his offense and the offense was just that good? Or do you not think, at least particularly in the second one, he wanted to make a point? No, I want to humiliate you, Missouri. And then that in turn maybe led to Eli Drinkwitz wanting to humiliate Josh Heupel last year.
Yeah, I agree with the latter part of that, where I thought that last touchdown against Missouri by Tennessee a couple of years ago was completely unnecessary. And I know some people are defending Heupel. Well, you just run your offense. The defense has to stop you. Look, you didn't even have to take another snap. Okay, the clock was going to run out. I was critical of that at that point, and I said that could come back to bite you, and it did. That's why it was completely unnecessary. I don't know if he had ill will against Missouri. He scored a whole lot of points against a lot of other teams as well, right? And kind of poured it on too. So you may be right. I can't say that for sure. But again, I'll go back to this. He scored a whole lot of points against a lot of other teams as well. But the Missouri one was kind of interesting to me, though, because you could have easily just let the clock run out and not take another snap.
I've done play-by-play for a couple of high school games that weren't as bad as that. Early in the season, a lot of times high school teams will continue to run their offense so they can get better later in the year, and you understand it. But that Missouri game to me did stick out like a sore thumb.
But sometimes the revenge isn't always. Oh, sorry, Jimmy, were you going to say something?
No, it stuck out to me too. But the reasoning behind it, I don't know. I do know this, that afterward he did indicate, we probably could have made a different decision there at the end of the game. He was almost half apologetic for that last touchdown. I do remember him saying that afterward. And look, I know you want your backups to score and stuff, but you had an opportunity to do that. So I just thought it was completely unnecessary to tack on that last touchdown against Missouri.
Okay, let me ask you this question. And that is, do you think that's what led to the Missouri beatdown last year, the game before? And it's brought to you by Varner Ford. 15 seconds from the dealership in just north of Knoxville that will absolutely give you the best selection and the best prices.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
So, Jimmy, let me ask you that. Do you think that's what led? Did Eli Drinkwitz want to lay it on Josh Heupel for what happened the year before?
Absolutely. No question about it. He even
dumbest question in a 25-year career by Dave.
He referred to it after the game about that. Now, all right, so here's my question about Heupel. If you had told Heupel, if you don't score that last touchdown and then you're not going to motivate Missouri and you're going to beat them, or score that last touchdown, run it up on them, and then you lose, what's he going to take? So, yeah, that was absolutely extra motivation for Missouri. I'll say this. It's one thing to run it up on Akron or Ohio because you're not going to play them the next year, in particular not on the road. That's why I second-guess that decision, and I still do. I don't think it made any sense. And do I think it motivated Missouri? You're dead-gum right. Would Missouri have won the game anyway? Nobody knows. But I don't think they'd have put a beat down on Tennessee like that if Tennessee hadn't run up the score on them the year before.
Yep. I agree. And I was told they used a totally different defense, that they reworked their entire defense for that game. I don't know if that's true, but you can probably imagine who told me that.
I believe that to be true. Yeah.
But I mean, long term, is it really that scary if you do something like that? I mean, just to give you guys a quick, from vindictiveness, quick thought. Who remembers in 2008 or 2007, the Georgia-Florida game where Mark Richt sent everybody out to get that personal foul penalty and Georgia ends up winning after the first touchdown? The very next year, Urban Meyer left Tim Tebow in the fourth quarter to throw a trick play touchdown pass to Percy Harvin when the team was up 35-3. That didn't stop Urban Meyer from still owning Georgia. And then another example is, Jimmy, you and Dave, you made two. I was not alive, so I don't. But y'all probably remember where Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Faust, was that his name? The last game at Notre Dame in '85, where he called a fake punt with his team up by 40 on 4th and 11 to score a touchdown. That didn't hurt Miami long term.
I just turned 50, Caleb. I don't know how far back you're going there.
I remember games when I was 11. You would have been 11, Dave. Okay, Jimmy, you know what I'm talking about, right? Where Jimmy Johnson called the fake punt when Miami played Notre Dame?
Yeah, and here's my question. Did they play each other the next year?
That's right.
I thought they did. Did they not?
I don't remember for sure. I do remember that. And look, and I will say this. Jimmy Johnson was one cocky fellow, right? I remember a lot of the comments he made before Tennessee played Miami in the 1986 Sugar Bowl 1985 season, where he didn't talk about if Miami would beat Tennessee. It was by how much. And Miami was in position to win a national championship. I'm trying to remember how this played out. Did Penn State lose? Somebody lost in front of them. And so if Oklahoma had won the game, they'd won the national championship. And he's all popping off about how bad they're going to beat Tennessee. And Tennessee cleaned his clock. So Johnson was a little bit of an outlier when it came to that. But yeah, he was not above running it up, no question.
No question whatsoever. And I do want to get to what the H, because it was something that I was told recently about Tennessee's quarterback situation last year. Jimmy's appearance brought to you by Varner Ford. It's time for What the H.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Jimmy, do you believe that Josh Heupel wanted at any point to bench Joe Milton last year?
I don't think he did.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think he would have.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
I don't think so. And here was the other thing, and I don't really know if I quite understand the reasoning, but Tennessee was intent to redshirt Nico Iamaleava, right? They only played him the 4 games. The bowl game doesn't count toward that. So he has 4 years of eligibility remaining. If he's as good as everybody thinks, he's not going to be here 4 more years, right? So I didn't really understand the point of redshirting him, because if he is that good, then he's not going to be around the duration. So, but I think because of that, I don't think that he considered benching Milton for Nico.
Here's what I was told, that they wanted to make a change. They realized that Joe Milton was really afraid to throw it over the middle, that they realized he could not throw with anticipation, which I think we would all agree with. And I'm not throwing the guy under the bus. I just think it's interesting that they were in a situation where if they play Gaston Moore, they send the wrong, and I was told that was considered. If they play Gaston Moore, it sends the wrong message possibly to Nico, and it destroys team chemistry. That was their concern. And then with Nico, he either wasn't ready or was banged up, is what I was told. A little bit of both throughout the season. So I think they were kind of stuck with Joe, as much as I hate to say that. I guess I disagree with you a little bit, Jimmy. I don't know that they could make the change.
But you think they considered making the change, is what you're saying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was closer than we think.
Yeah.
And be clear,
let me
change to Nico, the change to Gaston Moore.
Yeah, see, that one kind of that one's hard for me to swallow. The thing you said about Hooker didn't want to throw it over the middle, I don't think Tennessee wanted him to throw it over the middle.
Milton.
I think they called plays away from that. I remember, wasn't it Austin Peay where he couldn't complete a pass? And so finally they just threw about 18 flanker screens so he could get some completions and they could move the football. So, and I also think that you could correct me if you have different information on this. I think Heupel was reluctant to bench Milton because he was afraid he was going to lose the locker room a little bit. I think Milton had the locker room. And I think because of that, the Tennessee coaching staff was reluctant to do it. Now, when you get down to the bowl game, Milton's completed whatever, they're 8-4. Okay, time to move on. And mutual decision or whatever, they decided we got to take a look at Nico to get ready for next year. So I think that's kind of how it played out. But I do think Milton having basically control of that locker room was the reason Tennessee didn't make a change.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
Caleb?
so I agree, Jimmy, fully that it was about the locker room. I also agree that the biggest thing was they just wanted to make sure Nico, they wanted to fully condition him, I think, before they really got him out there, because I think he went into summer workouts last year really, really, really skinny. And so it wasn't just about the red shirt. I think they were trying to kind of protect him a little bit because, and I know people bring up Peyton Manning in 1994, but I think we can all agree that was that 94 offensive line was one of the best offensive lines that Tennessee football ever had.
Yeah.
And that was an issue. So my question to you is, if it wasn't about losing the locker room, from a pure ability perspective, could you have seen a scenario where they would have put Gaston Moore in over Joe Milton?
Not Gaston Moore. Nico, yes. Not Gaston Moore. Now, I think Gaston Moore is a really good quarterback in the orange and white game. I also think that right now, there aren't a whole lot of backup quarterbacks in the SEC better than Gaston Moore, right? Because they're depleted. And he's been in this system for 4 years maybe? This will be his 5th year in this system. But I do not think they considered going to Moore over Milton. I do think they would have considered going to Nico.
Jimmy, are we entering an era in which you're just not going to have a backup quarterback because of the transfer portal?
For the most part, yes. Ole Miss has had one. Somehow Lane Kiffin convinced the quarterback at Oklahoma State to go. His name was Sanders, to go to Ole Miss when he had Dart as his starting quarterback. So it's rare to see it. Now, I'll say this. Georgia's done a pretty good job of that. But to your point, I think it's rare to find that. You don't have that many quality backup quarterbacks. It's hard to do. And you got to find the Gaston Moores of the world. Or you've got to have usually a 2 or 3 year separation between your starter and your backup. I think LSU had a really good backup last year to Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
I think Nussmeier is going to have a really good year at LSU. But again, I think those are the exceptions rather than the rule.
Okay, so when you get to Caleb, do want to go ahead and set up our poll question you can take part in. Josh Heupel is vindictive, and I love it. Don't like it. I disagree. He's not. So that's up there. You can take part in the poll question. Caleb, I'm sorry to interrupt, sir.
Well, it's okay. I want to get back to what we're talking about because Dave, this source this is kind of a bombshell thing that they even entertained the idea of putting in Gaston Moore, and so it reminds me of a lot of crazy. I'm a history major. A lot of crazy ideas from American foreign policy that have been floated in the past. I'm not going to get to them, but some funny ones. But it reminds me of one of those because I never even considered him starting. The fact that they even entertained the idea, if what the source is saying is true, how much of an indictment is that on Josh Heupel's talent evaluation? That he picked a quarterback that was his guy, that he would have said, you know what? This guy may not be my guy. I may rather have this walk-on come in place of him during the season.
To me, the biggest evaluation mistake that Heupel has made centers around Joe Milton. When you look back, isn't it hard to imagine that you would have started Milton over Hendon Hooker? Who was a Heisman Trophy candidate? And
I can't even think about it.
And I remember this. I remember when you were able to cover practice. It was limited, but this gets to my point. Very limited in practice. You didn't get to see much. You saw him throwing against air. You saw him throwing against, there was no defensive backs. So many in the media came away thinking Joe Milton won this job, wasn't even close. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. You can't evaluate that on throwing against air. You can't evaluate that because he can throw it past 80 yards or whatever. And so I remember asking Pat Ryan, who was able to see a lot more practice than anybody else. I said, who would you start? He said, Hendon Hooker. I said, why? He said, because in scrimmages, they move the football with Hooker and they don't with Milton. Now, that's what Pat Ryan saw. That's what he told me. Why Heupel and the staff didn't see that, I don't know. I think they were just in love with his arm and thought that eventually he would be accurate with the long ball, which he never was consistently at Tennessee.
It's kind of like a race car driver. You remember the days of the lead lap when I used to do a NASCAR show. You want the sexier car, but in the end, I think you would rather have the best foundation. I mean, that car was fast, but it was loose would be the best way I could put it.
Yeah, and sometimes that car would break down. It'd have engine problems, maybe a rim problem, maybe a flat tire along the way. So, yeah. But getting back to what Caleb was talking about, too, I just think that they really misevaluated Milton. And Milton never was a good fit for this system. He never was. He never will be.
No. Does anybody think that's ironic, though, that the one thing that Josh Heupel's so good at is quarterbacks, and that's the one thing that we can openly question fairly? I mean, that to me is a little bit of a contradiction.
Yeah, and so if I try to go through his history, has he ever made a quarterback evaluation mistake like Milton? Probably not. Well, he didn't have much choice at Missouri with Drew Lock, correct? So he goes to Central Florida, and there was McKenzie. What was his name?
Mackenzie Milton.
Funny
enough.
Oh yeah.
No relation.
He was just in love with Milton's. So so he really, I mean, that guy was pretty much set up. I just don't know through his coaching career. I guess he can go back to Oklahoma. Did he ever made a quarterback evaluation mistake as big as Joe Milton?
I think it has much more to do with, I'm just going to be honest, guys. We just talked about his vindictiveness. I think Josh Heupel is exceedingly arrogant, like Bill Belichick GM style arrogant. You know, Bill Belichick saying, I can ship Tom Brady off and win with any quarterback. And I think Josh Heupel wanted to have the credit for the success that he had early. And see, with Mackenzie Milton, he inherited Milton, but you can't run Mackenzie Milton out the door when he just went undefeated at UCF. You kind of got to accept, okay, I got to stick with this guy. I think because Tennessee had a collection of quarterbacks, Josh Heupel was going to go out of his way to run off all the quarterbacks he could to win with the guy he picked, because I think he's that level of arrogant. And I think he refused to admit to himself that he made a mistake. And this, you ever hear him talk about getting fired from Oklahoma as offensive coordinator? Josh Heupel never thinks he made any mistakes. He doesn't think he ever did anything wrong from a play calling perspective. That really,
I don't agree with that. I've heard him after games talk about mistakes that he's made in press
conference. The games, but on big picture, he doesn't think he has. Like, he doesn't think the Oklahoma scenario was his fault at all.
I agree with that. And maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But I would bet you if you gave him some truth serum, he would acknowledge his mistake with Milton. But what good would it do to come out publicly and say that? Think about that. So if you come out and say, you know what, I really screwed up. I don't know why I started Milton. Well, how do you think Milton feels?
True.
I don't know if there's a reason to come out and say it. But I think privately, I think he realizes it. Here's what I'm saying. I don't think he's as arrogant as Belichick. I don't think he's arrogant, Caleb, as you think he is. Now, you got to have some arrogance to be a head coach, right?
Sure.
Like Nick Saban. But I don't think he goes as far as Caleb you think he does.
That's fair. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I like some arrogance. Jimmy and I are both Cowboys fans, so we've seen Jimmy Johnson in full effect. So
yeah.
That worked out well, didn't it, Jimmy?
For a little while.
And then it didn't.
Yeah.
By the way, set us up with the next one. I want to get to this with Jimmy quickly because I'm curious as to the creation of Tennessee's NIL and the Spire Group. I think a lot of us thought that the Spire Group stepped in and took over. But what were some things said by Alex Golish that would lead us to believe otherwise? Caleb, can you set us up for this one? I want to get Jimmy's take.
Yeah, so Alex Golish, Jimmy, was actually on a recent, I don't know if it was a podcast or a radio show. Obviously, for those who don't know, the current South Florida head coach, Josh Heupel's offensive coordinator in 2020, 2021, and 2022 at Central Florida and Tennessee. And he said, quote, specifically talking about Josh Heupel's NIL strategy, he said, I saw how a collective got established. I saw how Josh Heupel handled the team and the NIL part of it. As you saw teams crumble all around us, I thought he did an elite job of managing what was going on. And so for me, I felt like, all right, I've got a really good idea of how I would manage it. Talking about how he can manage these things at South Florida. To me, that really directly implied that more so than Danny White, Josh Heupel was the one behind really getting this NIL collective, Spire Sports, off the ground. I wanted to know y'all's thoughts on that.
It sounds like that based on that comment. And look, do I think there was some conversation directly, indirectly, however, between Heupel and Spire Sports and about who Tennessee wanted? I mean, Spire Sport had to know that Tennessee wanted Nico. Okay. So they can approach him and cut a deal. But how stupid would it look? I mean, look what Florida did with Rashada. Okay. So based on that, Tennessee's been fantastic. So is almost everybody else. But I do think that Heupel did a good job of managing it. I know there was that feud that probably involved multiple reasons between Jeremy Banks and Hooker. I get that. But I do think that he's done a nice job of managing it. And I do think there was some at least indirect communication with Spire about who does Tennessee want and how much are they willing to pay him and how much do they want this guy.
I got a feeling Golish is on the rise. We'll see. I mean, he hasn't even been a head coach yet. Do you like him, Jimmy? Do you think he's a solid coach?
I do. Yeah. I think they missed him last year. Not so much the play calling, because I think Heupel's got his fingerprints all over it. I think Golish was very good at noticing what a defense was doing, and this is what works against this defense, or this cornerback will bite on this, or this safety he's not fast enough to deal with Hyatt. We're going to isolate him. I think he did a great job pregame of finding issues with an opposing defense to exploit. And I think they missed some of that last year.
Great point. I want to get to you, Caleb. 1 second. I'll remind you that Jimmy's appearance is brought to you by Varner Ford. Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you.
Wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
All right, Caleb was about to explode during that 15-second commercial. So go ahead and jump on there, Caleb.
No, this is kind of the interesting thing to me, though, with Josh Heupel. If Josh Heupel was behind the NIL collective. Jimmy, I'm sure you heard the story yesterday of Jaden Rashada wanting to sue Billy Napier over the NIL failure. And for the longest time, I've actually, as much as I don't think Billy Napier's a great coach, I kind of defended him for the recruiting woes and the personnel woes, because I feel like Florida, the administration behind him, is just completely lost and incompetent. But if this point about Josh Heupel is true, that he was the one that really got the NIL collective in order, can we fairly say that means head coaches do deserve some blame when NIL collectives are incompetent and fall through? And maybe Billy Napier does deserve blame for promising Jaden Rashada NIL money that the boosters could not deliver.
Gosh, maybe, but I wish I knew a lot more. I did read in the lawsuit that Napier had promised that he would that the dad would get $1 million as kind of a signing bonus, which is a violation of the NCAA rule in place. It still would be, except the NCAA is toothless and they can't go after him. So I don't know how much of that he is to blame with the collective. I don't have any idea. So without having more knowledge of it, I'm not going to point a finger at him, other than the lawsuit contending that he told the dad, hey, we got $1 million coming your way. You'll get that. And then we'll make good on the rest of the stuff. And that's a part, and that's a verbal agreement, right? And they never got the $1 million. The only money they gave was $150,000. And why'd they give $150,000? That was to pay John Ruiz, who runs the collective, quote, collective at Miami. because he had given Rashad $150,000. I mean, this whole thing is just such a mess. And I think it's an individual case. If you want to compare Heupel to Spire Sports, or you want to compare Billy Napier to the Gator Fund or whatever you call it, I don't know how to do that. I don't have enough information on that to take shots at Napier in regard to that.
Let me ask you this: as far as the current state of college football, excuse me, what's most important? And I did put this as a poll question up on our YouTube page. What is most important as a head coach in college football? Is it NIL, recruiting, coaching? How would you rank them, Jimmy?
NIL or recruiting?
Yes, three. You got three choices.
Give me the three again. I'm sorry.
NIL, recruiting, or just coaching?
Coaching. To me, it is swayed. The recruiting and NIL kind of go hand in hand, but it's swayed toward NIL. I do think, and I've talked to several coaches about this, that the players don't talk. They talk about how much am I getting over everything. And I still contend, and Nick Saban's kind of alluded to this, that that's one reason he got out of it, was that was a part of it in dealing with it. So I think the NIL is the number one factor right now in getting recruits. Now, you still have to have a really good evaluation. I mean, if you go back to Tennessee, how much would they have paid Joe Milton? Okay. And that would have been a big mistake to give him a lot of money. So you still have to make the right evaluation. But I think NIL right now trumps the other two.
I can't argue with that. It's not coming up that way on our on our poll question on YouTube right now. 17% NIL, recruiting 39%, coaching 44%. Guys, I think Jimmy's right. I think he's exactly right. Caleb?
Yeah, so Jimmy, but isn't there a situation where if a coach gets really good in certain areas, they can start to get an NIL discount? Now, there's chicken or the egg. Do you do the NIL and then get the discount, or do you become the good coach? And so, because Tennessee's receiver room is loaded this year, don't you think a lot of them, I don't know for sure, I don't have the numbers, but don't you think it's very possible some of them took less money to play in Josh Heupel's system?
I think that's very possible. Don't know it, but I think it's possible. And to your point, I don't think Alabama had to pay a whole lot of money to get players, okay? But I think Ole Miss is having to pay a whole lot of money to get players because their program is not at the same level. So, yes, I do think you could build up some equity with your program if you're good enough. I don't know how much Georgia's paying, but I'm going to bet Georgia doesn't have to pay as much as Georgia Tech if they want to get an elite player.
Do you think there are – oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Caleb.
Do you think some of these SEC schools have delusions? And I mean, look, even pre-NIL, I think Tennessee had a delusion where they were just always going to be good no matter who they hired and what money they spent because they're like, we're Tennessee. Do you think some of these schools like Alabama have a delusion that they can still get those discounts because, those players just want to play for Alabama and don't realize that it was about Nick Saban and not Alabama?
Yeah, I think the key there is they wanted to play for Nick Saban.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily think Alabama is going to get that championship discount that they would have gotten under Saban. And maybe in due time, DeBoer will have that program at a level where players will go there for a little bit less money. But no, I think so much of it right now is we're going to go to the highest bidder. And that might be Louisville over Alabama. Might be.
Speaking of, Tyler Barron ends up at Miami. I'm kind of happy that I don't know. He kind of got what he deserved. I've heard he's a little bit difficult, but I also like the fact that I am happy that he landed somewhere, because you get caught in that portal and you turn people the wrong way, Jimmy, and you can suddenly be back at home.
Yes, you can. And the thing that doesn't get publicized that much, these numbers, I don't know what they are right now, but I remember in 2022, Greg Sankey talked about there were, I forgot what he said, over 1,600 players that entered the portal, and 1,000 of them didn't find a home. I do not think he distinguished, though, between scholarship and walk-ons. So if you take the walk-ons out of the equation, it was still a pretty high percentage. So we hear about the Caleb Williams, and we hear about the other great quarterbacks, Justin Well, I don't necessarily know that applies right now, because the NIL stuff wasn't out there. But we have seen a lot of transfers and the quarterback in particular, they've gone somewhere else and done great. I mean, Bo Nix this past year, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, he's got Michael Penix, were terrific college quarterbacks that started somewhere else and went somewhere else in some part was for playing time. One of them, Caleb Williams, went to Southern Cal because he wanted to play for Lincoln Riley. So you've got a combination of things that led in that direction. But God, the cost of getting quarterbacks right now is kind of ridiculous, isn't it?
I don't know how they can't have a salary cap, Jimmy. Some of the numbers I'm hearing, and I don't quote them a lot because I'm not. Sometimes I'll hear 100,000. Sometimes I'll hear 900,000. I don't. That's a big difference. So I don't know what the number is.
Well, even if you look at Rashada, his was supposed to be $13.85 million, which is more than what Miami offered. Miami was said to have offered $9.5 million. And in the lawsuit, they mention those numbers. So
they're fact. Yeah. Okay.
You would think. And Nico's getting $2 million a year. I do believe that because David Ubben with the Athletic saw the contract, to my understanding. So I think that's it's not necessarily $2 million each year. That's an escalator. Maybe it's 1.7, then it's 1.9, 2.2, 2.5, whatever. It averages out to $2 million a year. So I do think those numbers are real. And so then how do you satisfy your offensive linemen? I mean, what are those guys getting? What did Darnell Wright get? I don't know. What Spraggins getting?
What did Cooper get?
Yeah. There's there's a report on CBS right now. Now it doesn't do hard data, but based on all the reports of different NIL money promised to different players, they've actually come up with a pretty decent estimate of what people are worth. And they say the QB market range is 500 to 800,000 per year. Running back 200 to 300, wide receiver 75 to 300, offensive line 350 to 500,000.
But Caleb, they're already blowing past that on the quarterbacks, right, Jimmy?
On the good ones, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Jimmy. SEC spring meeting's right around the corner, so it's not football season. We call SEC Media Days the unofficial kickoff to football season, but this does get it rolling, and you will be there. So, what do you expect will be some of the topics of discussion at SEC Media Days?
Well, what was it, $2.7 billion that they're going to have to pay back over a 10-year period to students? That's going to be one of them. How do they deal with that? They will discuss once again whether or not to stay with an 8-game conference schedule or go to 9. That'll be a part of it. The thing that has really surprised me about the meetings, you've added 2 high-profile teams, Oklahoma and Texas, and yet for the first time, and I've covered these meetings every year since 1986, this is the first time the meetings will be 3 days and not 4. I'm like, are you kidding me? You got 2 more teams, and you're reducing the meetings from 4 days to 3. I don't understand that. Maybe they've done a whole lot of voting and Zoom meetings and whatever else they've done before they get down there. But that surprised me. But I will be there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll interview as many people as I can. But a lot of the topics will be the lawsuit. It'll be the football schedule. It'll be how do you deal with NIL. All of that stuff's going to come up. The other thing I'm going to ask is, and I saw a story about this the other day, is there a way, because some states have done this, on gambling, is there a way for a state to eliminate a prop bet for a college athlete in that particular state? Because these college athletes are getting hammered by bettors that have lost because they missed a free throw. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. And we saw what happened with Jonte Porter in the NBA on a prop bet where he faked an illness and now he's banned from the league altogether. Can the SEC, or will they petition the SEC states to try to make sure to ban prop bets for college athletes?
Interesting. Boy, because that would be, you wouldn't even hurt your teammates if you fixed it like that.
It's already a thing in Maryland. Funny enough, you can't prop bet for college athletes in Maryland. Interesting.
In Ohio, I think the same. Yeah, so some states have already gone that direction. And I just wonder, I haven't heard much from the SEC. Maybe I'll have. I haven't heard much from the SEC regarding this topic.
Yep. Jimmy, great stuff as always. Ray Varner Ford there in Clinton, nice enough to bring us Jimmy's appearance. We greatly appreciate you. And Jim, you also I think you need to mention you've got a new project that you're working on. I don't know what you call retirement, sir, but you work harder than anybody I know and always have. But you've got a new project where you've interviewed a couple of former Vols, and it's pretty awesome.
Well, I've had a really good time with it. It's I'm doing this. It's on YouTube. It's called the Rewind under full disclosure. My first interview was with Roy Kramer, former SEC commissioner. I've interviewed Sterling Hinton. I've interviewed Heath Schuler, Charles Davis. I've got more on the docket that we're going to interview. The thing that's happened, and I was a little bit surprised, these interviews have gone so long that we're breaking them into two parts. We don't want to run a 40-minute interview with Sterling Hinton, or anybody else. So we're breaking them into different parts to try to shorten the length of these. And we're launching them on Thursdays. We started Thursday morning. We're now moving it to Thursday afternoon to launch them. But it's been a fun project. I really enjoy catching up with some of the sports figures that we have. And so thanks for letting me mention that. But you can go to YouTube. Please subscribe. It's a free subscription. And you know this business, Dave. You've
little bit.
This. So, but it's been fun so far.
Good. Well, it's interesting. You remind me a little bit. I was watching one of yours the other day. You remind me of Howard Stern nowadays, because Howard Stern now does long form interviews with musicians. That's all he does anymore. Yeah. So it reminded me of you, but you are the two most different people in the world. Yeah, I would think that. By the way, I interviewed Sterling Hinton about being a DJ. Does that count? That's good stuff. That's right. But you don't talk about your book called Private Parts. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Caleb. Take care. Y'all have a good day. We want to talk about Caleb's private parts as well, as he hasn't written a book. Coming up in 2 minutes, we're going to dig into something I think you'll enjoy, and that is James Pierce Jr. is going to be really, really, really good. How good? He's on our countdown. Stay tuned. Take part in the poll question right now. What is most important as a head coach in college football? 13% NIL, recruiting 48%, coaching 36%. Guys, really? I'm not getting it there. It seems like it's a little stronger than that to me. Caleb, I think you would agree. And Josh Heupel is vindictive, and I blank love it. I disagree. He's not. Don't like it. Well, love it gets 44%. I disagree. He's not. 38%. Don't like it. 16%. Just personally, I know you don't root necessarily, but do you like a cocky coach? Because I was raised with Jimmy Johnson, so I love it.
I like a cocky coach that doesn't fake integrity. I'm talking about those coaches because there's a lot of coaches that are cocky, but they're like, oh, I'm so upstanding. And yes, I care about everything in college football. And I'm just a gentleman. I'm like, I like a cocky coach that is open about their cockiness, which is a Jimmy Johnson, which is why I liked Miami running up the score on Notre Dame in the 80s, because Notre Dame was relentlessly cocky, but they were like, oh, but we win with honor. We're the Catholics. We're the religious institution. Yes. And so I hate cocky coaches who are sanctimonious and think they have some moral standard over other people.
Fair enough. We'll be back with you in 2 minutes, and we're going to talk about one of Tennessee's best football players. Where does he rank on our most important Vol countdown? Stay tuned. Hit that like and subscribe button. Do me a favor. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
All-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge, all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Meat Drinker says Howard Stern's an idiot, though. No, Jimmy Hyams is not Howard Stern. But his new stuff, though, where Howard Stern interviews musicians and they play for him is pretty cool, Caleb. I do like that. Now, take part in the trivia question. We want you to do that. And also, Tennessee's newest commitment is not Polynesian. I'll explain. But the trivia question now, not the trivia question, the poll question, what is most important as a head coach in college football? NIL gets 14%, recruiting gets 51%, coaching 34%. That surprises me. Does that surprise you, Caleb? Quite frankly, I think if you were an A+ NIL guy, you could be a C- in pretty much everything else, and you'd be fine. That's where I see it. And I would have said that 5 years ago. I would have said that 3 years ago. I would have said that 4 months ago.
This is the flaw, and I'm going to trigger a lot of people involved in the college football world who love college football, and maybe trigger you, Dave, because you covered it for a little while. Ability to recruit has been consistently the most overvalued, overrated attribute given to a coach over the past 40 years. It's as overrated as arm strength when you look for an NFL quarterback. And here's why it is. There's a baseline of recruiting you have to do. No denying that. You have to meet that baseline. Once you meet that baseline, the program and the situation surrounding the program, along with your resume as a coach, is what does the recruiting much more than the actual effort you make and the selling ability you make on the recruiting trail. Okay, and so this is where, like, Nick Saban worked very hard on recruiting. He had the best recruiting classes ever because he won a national championship at LSU where anybody could recruit. And then he had that credibility with him when he went to Alabama, and Alabama had support behind him. I guarantee you, if Nick Saban stayed at Michigan State, he would not have been getting #1 recruiting classes every year.
Want to clarify something. I think it's a little bit more important than that, but I do think that it is something that when you step into the University of Tennessee and you have those facilities, if you can't get a top 25 class, I'm not just talking about a coach, I'm talking about any average Joe, then you've lost your mind. I mean, you do realize how many people you have that will do your bidding in a heartbeat? You got 24 people that will go and recruit it. 24. That's low. You've got 50 people that'll do exactly what you tell them to in recruiting. So with that stadium, with those facilities, if you can't get a top 25 class by default, you're not doing a good enough job, or you're one of those coaches that coaches up players, and that's fine. By the way,
but programs sell themselves more than coaches.
Real quick, I see 17 likes. I want more likes on there. We've got 300 viewers now. I want more than 17 likes. Come on. Go ahead, Caleb.
But you're making my point. Programs sell themselves way more than the coach sells the program.
Well,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I guess that's where I met with it. I mean, guys, I don't think Kirby Smart's raking up #1 recruiting classes at Georgia because he's just a better recruiter than anybody else. He's a good recruiter and he meets the baseline. And he happens to be at Georgia where it's very easy to rack up #1 recruiting classes.
Well, okay. I want to move on. But the difference would be there's a difference between a tireless recruiter like Heupel or Smart and a half-ass recruiter like Derek Dooley.
That's why I said there's a baseline. There's a baseline that you have to meet.
Yeah.
And if you meet that baseline,
so slightly above Derek Dooley is the baseline.
Well, Dooley was hired because he was a recruiting coordinator, but no one did their research and was like, oh, he was the recruiting coordinator at LSU, where you and I could wake up and get a #1 class.
Yeah, absolutely. Boundless Moving, from the 2-hour minimum to the turnkey operations, they've got you covered. Boundless Moving, boundlessmoving.com in East Tennessee, or in Charlotte as well. So check them out. That's Boundless Moving, as we want to remind you that you can take care of your parents and whoever the case might be with our good friend Medicare Misty. She will take care of you. Then we're going to talk some James Pierce after this.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. And let's continue the countdown. The most important ball in the offseason heading into the summer is, do you want to give us a complete countdown and run it down?
So to this point, we have had Javonte Spraggins, John Campbell Jr., Lamari Thomas, Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, and Keenan Peely. Now we get to the big stars.
Okay, so we're down to basically Nico, Pierce, and who? Who are we down to? We've got 3 left.
We've got somebody who likes to tell you guys to like and subscribe on this channel a lot. But
Cooper Mace, who maybe we'll have if you hit like and subscribe. Are you talking about this guy right here? This guy? He's one of the top
here. Hit like and subscribe.
I think he is. So you should hit like and subscribe. I'm interested to see if he can top Nico even. We'll see. But now, James Pierce. How good can James Pierce be? He's number 3 on our countdown of the top balls heading into summer camp. How good can James Pierce be?
Well, PFF has him as the #1 2025 NFL draft prospect.
Pretty good.
This dude can be amazing. Talent-wise, at his position, nobody's better than James Pierce talent-wise at his position. Maybe in college football. Now, why do I have him number 3? James Pierce almost shouldn't be that high because of how loaded Tennessee is at defensive end, Dave. So for James Pierce to be that high is just a testament to how good of an edge rusher he is. Because, quite honestly, David Hobbs, Joshua Joseph, Shandavian Bradley, Jordan Ross. Tennessee's been loading up on edge rushers where they're going to have options if something happens to James Pierce. But James Pierce is so freakishly good that they won't have James Pierce, even if they'll have good players. I'm trying to think of another situation like this. You can tell me when you were covering the 90s and the 2000s teams where they had good players at a position, but the starter was just so freakishly generationally good that he still was that crucial to the team.
Gosh, I think there were probably four defensive tackles behind Albert Haynesworth and John Henderson that I thought could play. I'm wanting to say Rashad Moore was in that group.
Yeah,
I'm a little before
Amari Hand.
Amari Hand, who I refer to all the time as a part of the team instead of Amari Thomas.
Andre Dickerson was on that team.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there are guys there. I don't know if they would have been all SEC players, but had they had the playing time, Andre Dickerson is one you mentioned in particular, that had he had the playing time and not, he just didn't handle not having playing time well.
Well, this is.
If he had that, I think he could have been a good player, is what I'm trying to tell you, which furthers your point.
Yeah, and even sticking with edge rusher and defensive end for a minute, let's just go here. There was, because he moved Leonard Little to middle linebacker through the first 2 downs of every drive in 97, they would put Jonathan Brown at defensive end. Jonathan Brown became an all-SEC defensive end. That still wasn't what Leonard Little could have done had he stayed at defensive end the whole time.
That's true. Folks, if you're in the Chattanooga area and ever need insurance, Don Self will take care of you. DonSelf.net. Even if he's not the best fit for you, he'll make sure you get to the right person. DonSelf.net. State Farm's the way to go because of the customer service. Those claims get responded to, get answered, get taken care of quickly. 423-396-2126. 423-396-2126. Go to DonSelf.net. That's DonSelf.net. And know that shopping for prices is important, but those claims are more important. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. You can find the link right down below. You want to play 4 Downs? Brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. How does that work for you there, Caleb?
Sounds good. Are we jumping in the hot tub with James Pierce?
Jumping in the hot tub with a lot of people. Here we go.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
Coop, who will be either number 1 or number 2 in our countdown, which will reveal the remainder of that this week, says
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thanks, Coop. Appreciate that.
Coop here. First down.
First team All-SEC preseason, James Pierce, yay, nay?
Yes, he'd better be.
Okay. If not, I mean, do we I'm curious if we're seeing the upside of him, if the rest of the conference is seeing the upside of him. I could see the media, this is why I brought this up. I could see the media screwing this up, to be real honest with you, at Media Days, which we'll be at in Dallas in July.
No, they're not screwing up James Pierce. James Pierce is being projected the number 1, not a first-round draft pick, the number 1 draft pick for 2025 across a ton of outlets. He was all SEC last year. James Pierce, I think he was all SEC. Let me double check that actually, but I'm pretty sure.
I don't know that he was. I think he flew under the radar last year until the season started.
He did fly under the radar, but I still think that maybe he wasn't all SEC. I think I got that wrong. I apologize. But still, if you read every single media outlet, every single draft 2025 mock draft, everybody has James Pierce going number 1. Media is not going to miss out on this one. It's too easy. He's out in everybody's face. James Pierce is an obvious. He's going to be preseason first-team All-SEC. He's going to be postseason first-team All-SEC. He's going to be preseason first-team All-American and postseason first-team All-American.
Well, he's guaranteed of that because he was 2023 All-SEC first team last year. So he's going to be first team headed into this season. I wasn't sure he got the love last year. I'm glad to see that. He was also the SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. What down is next, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right. How many sacks will James Pierce Jr. have? Excuse me.
All right, so we had 9.5 last year. The edge rushers are better this year. The defensive tackles are all back. And I think here's what's going to be key. The middle linebacker play is going to be better. And by the way, quality middle linebacker play has a lot to do with edge rushers being able to get sacks, doesn't it, Dave?
It does. It absolutely does.
So I think James Pierce he's going for 13 sacks this year.
I could see that. All right. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Tackles for a loss. How many will he have? How many did he have last year? What can we expect out of Pierce on the ground?
So last year, pulling up tackles for a loss, I just want to be clear to make sure I get this right. But he had 14.5 tackles for a loss last year. I'm going 22. I'm going 22.
I was actually going to go 22 as well. That's very strange and very weird. Maybe we need to stop hanging out together every day, Caleb. Yeah, I was actually going to say 22, and I thought Caleb's going to think I'm crazy for saying 22 because that's way too many. All right, what down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. How many pressures? Is that doable? Because that's really where his impact will be felt. It's not going to be on the 12 sacks. It's not going to be necessarily on the 22 tackles for a loss. Those can be monstrous plays, but it's the constant pressure that you're able to feel. I don't know how many quarterback pressures he had last year, but those are impacting games. Caleb, can you tell me that? And let's do an over-under what I'll have this year.
Yes. So last year, James Pierce had 53 pressures and a 21.3% pressure rate on
That is
quarterbacks.
insane. That is literally insane. I've never heard that number before used. That is getting to the quarterback 1 out of every 4 downs. And think about, I've never heard that stat before. And think about that for just a second. Some of them are running downs.
Yeah, you were right.
So he's basically getting to the passer 50% of the time is what you're telling me. That's I'm literally, no exaggeration, stunned.
I think it's going to be significantly higher this year because, and here's the point, Tennessee is going to be forcing teams in a lot more passing situations this year because of the fact that Nico and their offense is going to get them more leads. I think you could be seeing like 70 pressures from James Pierce and a 30% rate this year.
If you like 25% pressuring the quarterback on every single play, including factoring running plays, hit the like button. You ought to like right now because man, James Pierce is really good. What down, Coop? By the way, a new edition of the Vol Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning coming out today.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here, 4th down.
And that'll be with Cooper Mays. Tennessee's second best defensive end is.
Ooh, now you're really throwing a curveball at me, Dave.
See, I got you on that one. You would have said Tyler Barron, or would you?
Okay, so there's a lot of, if I'm going recruiting, I would say somebody like Jordan Ross, but I do think experience can matter in this system to a certain degree. So I'm going to go Joshua Josephs. I think Joshua Josephs was filling in for Pierce a lot last year at different times to give him a break. And I actually think Joshua Josephs could be, I mean, he did have 4.5 tackles for a loss and 3 sacks last year in, reserve time. And so that's why I think James Pierce will be good. I think those two lining across from each other is going to be, what's the last combo in college football or even at Tennessee where you just saw 2 ends on either side and it didn't matter where you turned, you were in trouble?
Oh gosh, I guess didn't Sean Ellis and Leonard overlap by a year?
Yes, but that was when they were putting Jonathan Brown at defensive end and Sean Ellis on the other side.
Well, then it would be Brown and Ellis, right?
But they were barely playing Ellis that year, I think, in 97.
I'd
right?
be interested to know.
What about Sean Ellis and Corey Terry? How'd they work out together?
Pretty good. I could roll with that. The 3 most talented defensive linemen, I'm going to tell you who they are right now based off the people that I've talked to. One is Joseph's, and it's brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2 T's.com. Hemp House Chat with 2 T's.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. Go to the Hemp House Chat with 2 T's.com right down below. The 3 most talented players are Elijah Simmons, James Pierce, and Joshua Josephs. If those guys have great years, Tennessee, and I was thinking about this last night. If their offensive or defensive line is half as good as we believe it will be, Nico may be the second biggest story. You might get a little bit conservative, actually, and let your defense win some games. That wouldn't stun me. Is that crazy talk, Caleb?
Well, think about this for a minute. Okay, so you think Elijah Simmons is generational if the switch flips, right?
If he's healthy.
If he's healthy and if the switch flips, right?
A little bit of both, but I was kind of corrected on that, to be real honest with you. It's health. I like his attitude. I like his based off who I've talked to now.
But basically, we're saying generational potential on the level of John Henderson, Albert Hainsworth, Justin Harrell before he got hurt, Jesse Malona. Are we talking like in that tier of like all-American generational potential?
I won't go Henderson, Hainsworth. I'll go 1 notch down with Mahalona and who's the other one you mentioned?
Justin Harrell before he got hurt.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll go 1 level down. You would agree they're 1 level down, right?
Yes, they're one level down. Although Justin Harrell might have been on that level if he played the whole 2006 season because he was really, really good. Okay, so here's where I'm thinking about that. So semi-generational in Elijah Simmons, generational in James Pierce. Do you think Joshua Josephs is generational or just an NFL guy that could be very, very good?
I think he has tremendous upside. We use the word generational too much. I was thinking the other day, so I'm not going to say that. But I think that it's hard to have 3 generational players on the same defensive line.
Okay, here's the best comparison.
Okay.
Because I'm seeing it. Okay, because John Henderson and Haynesworth were both generational. They were both generational. Leonard Little was generational. Sean Ellis was NFL Pro Bowl style, right?
There you go. Okay. I will take Joseph's. I will rank them. Pierce, generational. Simmons, generational. And Joseph's, potentially Pro Bowl. I'm not ready to go all pro. There's a different designation there, as you know. I'm not ready to go all pro, but I will go Pro Bowl. And I think he's that good. So that's probably, I've had him higher rated than most out there.
I agree. Has Tennessee ever had 3 defensive linemen that are Pro Bowl caliber in the NFL? Ever? I know they've had 2 starting because, like, okay, you could say John Henderson and Sean Ellis in 99, but John Henderson that year wasn't Pro Bowl caliber, what he would become, right? He was still learning the system a lot. Have they ever had 3 players that are at the level they need to be at that are NFL Pro Bowl caliber on the defensive line?
Derek, I know you think I'm crazy, brother, but I'm telling you, everybody I talk to, if the guy can stay healthy, I promise you. And I know Derek posted again, and generational would have been done broke out.
Not true.
Telling you it's the injuries. He's banged up. This guy can be really, really, really good.
And also to correct Derek on that, Darnell Wright didn't break out till his senior year, and he was generational. Reggie White didn't break out till his senior year, and he was generational.
That's a good point. Anybody else you can think of? Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work is covered by a nationwide warranty, so you can get it fixed anywhere. Cherokee Boulevard or online at qualitytirepros.com, qualitytirepros.com. Stop by and say Off the Hook Sports said hello. Hey, Bo. Say hey, Bo. That's exactly right. Support our sponsors. That is why we're here. So they are a pretty good group up front. Pretty good group on the offensive line if they stay healthy. Would you rather be great at one of those 2 places or quarterback?
I mean, quarterback is the most, well, for the units, quarterback is still probably the most important. I'd be great at, rather be great at quarterback and good on those 2 because the units are just, I mean, quarterback is quarterback, but
I'd rather be great on the offensive and defensive line than great at quarterback.
That's so like 1980s SEC Dave talking. It absolutely is. That is Dave from the 1980s. We're going to call him 80s Dave. We're going to call him 80s Dave. Okay.
Righty. We'll reset the poll question. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. All right, we're going to chuck this one pretty quick. So if you want to vote, do it now. What is most important as a head coach in college football? NIL, 18% of the vote. Recruiting, 49% of the vote. Coaching, 33% of the vote. We're going to change that up. And what were we just discussing, Caleb? I had a really good
Would you rather be great on the offensive line, defensive line, or quarterback?
Yes, that's what we're going to set during the break. So hang tight with me. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
his vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Experience it all at Varner Ford in Clinton. Need a quick fix or maintenance? Visit our Quick Lane Tire and Auto Center. Keep your Ford running smoothly with the experts in our service department. Ready for your next Ford? Our sales team is here to guide you to this 24 Ford Escape all-wheel drive, $31,954. 24 Ford Edge all-wheel drive, $37,975. 24 F-250 4x4 Crew Cab, $54,760. Local you trust, experience you can afford. Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, reset as we're going to change the poll question. Caleb, if you don't mind doing that, I would greatly appreciate it. We close out with this. What is the most important factor as a head coach in college football? NIL is 18%, recruiting 49%, coaching 33%. Want to replace that with what would you rather be a lead at? Quarterback, offensive line, defensive line. Caleb thinks I'm old fuddy-duddy. I disagree with him, as I do from time to time. I want to be sure and thank our friends at Newbert Collision Center. For over 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. I love them. JoeNewbertCollision.com, JoeNewbertCollision.com. It's right below. Keep them in mind, because unfortunately that next bump might be right around the corner. We will have an update from the SEC baseball tournament before the end of the program today, thanks to our good friends at Sports Treasures. They're down there, and that's a lot of fun. Plus, we have a whole new prize to give away, and it is our May prize, which will be given away at the end of next week. So, Caleb, go ahead and set up our question. That is our poll question. And then I'm going to share our prize for the upcoming drawing that we'll have. And all you have to do, it's pretty simple, Caleb, is we'll have a drawing, and all you have to do is be a member of Hooker's Corner. So get us set on that. And
already got it set up.
Oh, sweet. All right. So what is the question again? Just to remind those if they just tuned in.
Where would you rather be a lead? And I've got quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, or I close to say somewhere else, just in case you'd rather be a lead somewhere else.
Nice. All right. Check out this May prize announcement. How awesome is this? Pretty cool. A Tony Vitello autographed baseball, thanks to our friends at Sports Treasures. We'll be giving that away. We'll also give away weekly prizes. We had Friday off last week, so we didn't give away a prize. We'll be giving away a shirt or a book, depending on what you would like this week. So you have weekly prizes and the opportunity to win a grand monthly prize, brought to you by our friends at Sports Treasures in North Knoxville. Certainly check them out. We love Sports Treasures, and we'll visit with Zach from Sports Treasures here in just a bit. We'll change gears a little bit as Tyler Barron goes to Miami. I hate this for all parties. Who wins in this? Miami gets a guy that's bounced around, to 2 or 3 different schools. Tennessee loses what would arguably have been their second best pass rusher. And Tyler Barron's family has probably made and canceled 15,000 travel trips to go see him play. Nobody wanted this, but Miami and Tyler seem to have lost more than anybody else, Caleb.
I think more than anything else, this was I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think this was a desperate move by both parties between Miami and Tyler Barron. Yeah, no, y'all heard me right. It was a desperate move.
Wait a second. Why do we not have you on the screen, Caleb? What's going on with your screen?
Sorry.
There
okay,
we go.
let's start this all over. Okay,
Let's
say
just
this all again.
Start it all over. There we go.
Okay, Tyler Barron has transferred to Miami after transferring out of Tennessee this past all season. He first, after transferring from Tennessee, committed to Ole Miss. Backed out of Ole Miss, went to Louisville, where Wesley Walker also went. They have both since transferred out of Louisville because Louisville apparently was unable to cash some NIL checks. And he has now transferred to Miami. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Go right ahead. I think our message board is absolutely the best. Travis says they probably got him for next to nothing. I agree with that because he had issues elsewhere. He had no leverage. Derek says his mind's on the NFL and money. He's done. I tend to agree with that. If you're more concerned about NIL money, you're not going to make it to the pros, no matter what sport you play. Smoky Mountain Red says Tyler has killed future relationships in Knoxville for his future. He's right. I know he thinks he's going to be a 10-time all-pro NFL player, but he might just be a pharmaceutical salesman. Okay, well, those opportunities are there as long as you don't burn people. Well, now you burned everybody in Knoxville, so they're not going to offer you that 6-digit job out of the chute. Those are the things that college athletes don't take into account. Being a part of the University of Tennessee means something. Being a part of the football program means something, and it helps you get a head start on your career. He doesn't get that.
Also, beyond all of that, and here's what people don't understand with the NFL, because a lot of people say, oh, the NFL just looks at talent and that's it. No. If you're generational, like we talked about, if you're James Pierce, if you're John Henderson, or if you're Leonard Little, they just look at talent. Because they'll get in line to try to draft those players, Dave. But you know this. If you're a 4th to 7th round type of pick, all of a sudden the recommendations from college football coaches matter, doesn't it? All of a sudden what the college football coaches tell the scouts matter. Okay? If there's questions and there's concerns, and they're going to go to Josh Heupel and say, why did Tyler Barron transfer out? And he tells the full story, it's not going to look good. Now, here's the point. This is a desperate move for Miami. Miami may have opened up a little bit of an NIL budget for Tyler Barron because they're desperate. They have a top 5 NIL collective, I believe, but they have a very problematic program down there. And I'm not talking about the old school Nevin Shapiro stories and everything Miami was doing in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, they have a coach who, by all accounts, made what we all agree may be the stupidest decision in the history of college football last year. Like, maybe the history of football. It's like Pete Carroll throwing the ball on the 1-yard line in the Super Bowl and Mario Cristobal running a play. I don't know which one is dumber. Probably Mario Cristobal running a play. But, like, a coach that Miami fans probably want fired overnight. They have to be good this year. And they're taking whoever they can get to be good. So they got desperate for Tyler Barron. Tyler Barron himself is desperate. Because I will say this with the transfer portal and the Wild West, guys, you think scouts talk to coaches about character and attributes of players? That's true. You don't think schools talk to schools about it? You don't think other schools are looking and saying, why did Tyler Barron transfer? There's kind of an issue here. There's something wrong. And Tyler Barron, I don't think found the place he wanted to find. I think he first chased NIL checks, wasn't getting them. And you're right. He got desperate and went to Miami. And lucky for him, Miami's desperate too.
They are desperate, and you have Wesley Walker, and yes, question by Mr. Osborne. There are the two loosely related. I think they're stepbrothers. So he goes to Michigan. I mean, he's found a good place to land. I suppose, in terms of the facilities, but they've got a first-year coach now who you and I disagree. I think that thing's going to fall apart and be a disaster. You think it's going to go like Philip Fulmer when he was hired, and that's cool. It may. But you go to a place with a first-year coach that you would have to admit, Caleb, even though we have a different mindset of where that Michigan program will be, they're more desperate for people. So Michigan taking Wesley Walker is a sign to me that they're taking people they normally wouldn't. Why? Because they absolutely know that they don't have the same pull with Jim Harbaugh. They just don't.
I think Wesley Walker, though, it's totally different in the sense of Michigan likes veteran leaders of a certain level of discipline and high character guys. I know y'all think I'm attaching some sort of like morals onto Michigan where they just had the sign stealing scandal, but the way they've always run their program has been with discipline, kind of character, sacrifice for the team type of guys. And Wesley Walker, whatever you think about him, the reason he transferred out of Tennessee was he just wasn't good enough. Okay, it wasn't a Tyler Barron diva moment chasing money. And I think that he took advantage of that when he did go to Louisville, and Louisville promised him something they couldn't give him. But I think Wesley Walker is a guy, he's the anti-Tyler Barron, where he doesn't have the raw talent to be great, but he's kind of the guy you want in your locker room, I think. And Michigan likes locker room guys. And don't forget this. I know he didn't coach Wesley Walker directly because Wesley Walker played in the secondary, but Tennessee's linebackers coach Brian Jean-Marie just went to Michigan. So he may know some things about Wesley Walker too that he likes. And I think that's a really big part of this. I think Wesley Walker is more of a locker room guy. Tyler Barron is more of a I need talent type of guy.
Agree, but I like Wesley a little bit more than you. I will say that.
Let's
put it this way. Would you take either back?
I would take Wesley back because of the locker room guy, but if you liked Wesley more than me, the coaches would have probably shelled out some NIL money to keep him, and they didn't.
Okay, fair.
And
no, Apex Apparel, and it is one of our fine sponsors, and they present to you some of our prizes. If you check right there, anybody that signs up to Hooker's Corner, our Patreon page, and if you can put that link in the chat, I greatly appreciate that. Then you will be able to choose from one of these prizes. The flag is already gone by somebody that joined, but we'll be sure and take care of you and get you a prize. Look at that hat, both hats out there that are just yours for the taking, just $9.98 a month. And you get recruiting info and also the opportunity to win big time prizes. It's pretty awesome. So we'll see if we can bring Caleb back up on the screen, as I always have trouble bringing up him with somebody else. There you are, Caleb. We'll have a live report from the SEC baseball tournament here momentarily. Tennessee does pick up an offensive line commit for the 2025 class. What can you tell me about the Vols' newest pledge, which was certainly significant news over the evening?
Well, we can break this down. They have picked up, as we talked about, Anthony Cade Ogumaro, who they picked him up out of Oklahoma, which is why we talked about in the first block, for those of you who saw, about Josh Heupel and if he was specifically going for Oklahoma kids, because they got him from Cincinnati. I mean, they beat out Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, Duke, East Carolina, schools you wouldn't think Tennessee would want to compete with. But Glenn Ellerbe wanted him. He comes from Elgin, Oklahoma. He is a 3-star across the board, an interior lineman at 6'4", 320, so a good size as an interior lineman. And he basically has a strong lower body and is great in the run game. Now, his agility and mobility is questionable, but it is functional, they say. So, which helps on pull run plays, but you don't have a lot of pull run plays in this offense. So the question is going to become his pass blocking, but the interior line is crucial for run blocking because that's what makes the whole offense go. So I think he's a good fit for the system in that regard. At the same time, to this point, Dave, and I mean, we have to call it out. So far, Tennessee's missed on most of their offensive linemen on the recruiting trail. They have been successful with offensive linemen that have been starting in the program. Nobody that they recruited, though. They've only gotten them either through the transfer portal or they were already on the roster when the coaches arrived. They have missed on a lot of linemen. And that's a real question going forward. And he's the first lineman committed in the 2025 recruiting class. So I have a lot of questions about this pickup, whether it was we talked about maybe sticking to Oklahoma. Was it to get somebody else? Is he even going to be there in a year? I mean, I think that Tennessee's plan going forward is to use the transfer portal to build their offensive line every year.
Maybe, but I like this pickup. I do. I know it's a 3-star guy, but he's Micronesian. And we've talked about how much we love Polynesian. That's very similar. So Stacey Oliver, who handles a lot of our baseball coverage, she sent me a text of what Polynesian means. Okay. Ogamura's family is from Saipan, the largest of the Northern Marina Islands, a U.S. Commonwealth in the Western Pacific. He wrapped up his official visits by last weekend, wanted to make his college decision before heading back to Saipan this weekend. Bottom line, he's from the same area, probably the same bloodline. I know we shouldn't make stereotypical statements, but I have never met a Polynesian player who doesn't play hard as hell. Not one time. If there's one, I've never met him.
Yes, but you also have to have a base level of talent too. And there was again, is he agile enough for this roster? That's the question. And I mean, look, the track record is there of Dave. Let's call it what it is. We talked about Heupel's talent evaluation.
Like this pickup, do you?
I don't like any offensive lineman that commits to Tennessee at this point because Josh Heupel's been a miserable failure when it comes to signing offensive linemen out of high school. I mean, a transcendent failure, like a failure that he has been as good as Derek Dooley was when Derek Dooley didn't sign an offensive lineman in the 2012 recruiting class. Okay, he's been that bad. And seriously, since Josh Heupel's been at Tennessee, he might as well have signed no lineman out of high school. He'd have been just as good as he's been. That's how much of a failure he's been at signing offensive linemen. Okay.
Well, let's say I'd like to soften
historic failure.
Program
unprecedented.
The program has been. It's also been a challenge to get. I mean, as bad as Tennessee was, let's not forget that all of their recruiting was affected by an NCAA investigation. I mean, that hung over the program. So, pardon me, Caleb. I think that we could make a strong argument. We don't know who Josh Heupel is as a recruiter yet. I feel like we're starting to learn what it's doing, what he can do.
Heupel signed 5 offensive linemen in his first full recruiting class in 2022. 2 have transferred. The other 3 haven't even sniffed the field. Okay. He signed, the most notable one was Addison Nichols. 2023, he comes around. Now, it was only 2023, but he signed 3 offensive linemen. He signed 5 offensive linemen in 2023 as well. The only ones that we've heard any sniff or whiff of are Shimarad Umarov and Vyson Lane. And those are questionable, right? We don't know that they're going to be good. We don't know that they're going to be in the rotation.
I was told Umarov will play this year. So, but we'll see. We don't know.
I think his failure on the offensive line front at this moment is historic. And I'm reflexively going, if Josh Heupel's team wanted him, he must not be good. Because they have been so bad at evaluating offensive line talent.
Let me ask you this. What percentage do you place on Josh Heupel? Because I place 70% on the state at the university, 30% on Heupel. He's missed on some guys. I can't argue with that. Are you 70-30 flip-flop?
I'm 60-40 Heupel. Some of this has to be on Ellerbe because you trust your offensive line coach to run things. But what I'm constantly seeing with Heupel, and I have to be honest, what I'm seeing over and over and over again is Heupel is falling in love with physical attributes of recruits and thinking, I don't care if they're limited in their actual football talent. They're so physically gifted. I can coach them into being good. Are you not noticing that too?
I think they've coached him to being good. And James, I want to address what you're saying. So you're calling for Ellerbe's head. No. We think they get coached up once they get here, right?
Yeah, we just think they're not that good.
Yeah, we just think they're not the most talented offensive linemen that are out there. Again, I like this one. I like this reach, if it is a reach, but I like the pickup. And let's not forget, There's nothing wrong with recruiting the wrong guy now because you can run him off, and there's nothing wrong with it. You just say ABC.
Okay, but how, okay, so Dave, you're a Yankee fan, obviously. When the Yankees had their dynasty, yes, they were signing players in the free agent market like nobody's business. They were pouring out
Devin
money.
points out they just signed a top 5 offensive line class.
Who, Tennessee? Are we talking about this? A top 5 offensive line class? You keep talking about the class rankings. I keep talking about the way Josh Heupel's missing on guys out of high school. Name a high school recruit Josh Heupel signed on the offensive line that you have seen on the field. Somebody name it. I will wait on the message board. And Dave, the reason I wanted to bring up you're a Yankee fan is because when the Yankees had their dynasty going in the late 90s, yes, they were buying players, but they also had a heck of a farm system, didn't they? I mean,
yes.
their core players came through their farm system, right? And don't you think NIL needs to be the same way where you can go get transfers to beef up your class, but you need to have guys that you sign as freshmen that work out and can develop through your system?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree. I'm with Elias. We're sort of acting like he's been here for 10 years, and offensive line isn't a position that you rarely start freshmen. I'm just going to say that I don't know yet. I don't know if he's good at evaluating offensive linemen. I figured that I will figure that out within a year because I want to see the Umarov class does. I want to see how the next class does. I just think it was a mess. We'll have to agree to this. Go ahead.
He's in his 4th year at Tennessee. There was not one offensive lineman entering his 4th year that he has signed that we expect to start this year, that he signed out of high school.
Would you rather be elite at quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, or somewhere else? Quarterback, 52% of the vote. Offensive line, 26% of the vote. Defensive line, 22% of the vote. So does that surprise you at all, Caleb?
I think let's see. I'm not as shocked as you are. I think this proves that you're just outdated, Dave. And yeah, that's all I'm saying. I will say that you think the trenches matter. The trenches combined doesn't even touch quarterback. It's 48% basically people are saying I'd rather be great at quarterback than be great on both the offensive and defensive lines. The majority of people are saying that. That's where we're at.
Who won the last 2 national championships?
Michigan and Georgia.
Okay. Who won the championship for that?
Georgia.
Who was their quarterback?
A Heisman runner-up and Stetson Bennett.
Oh, he was a Heisman runner-up because the team he was on. You know that as well as I do.
He was a Heisman runner-up. Heisman runner-up. And then a first-round draft pick for Michigan and J.J. McCarthy.
I'm moving on. Zach joins us from Sports Treasures. We love him. Zach is at the SEC baseball tournament. Zach, we certainly appreciate your time. How are you, sir?
Doing well, doing well. You all?
We're fantastic. We've got a Tony Vitello baseball to give away. All people have to do is join Hooker's Corner. We greatly appreciate that. You're in North Knoxville, over 5 million Sports Treasures, and you've got events pretty much all the time. Before we get to baseball, can you talk about some of the events that you've had and will have?
Yeah, so we've had a little run here recently with guys coming in. We had Brew McCoy, Dylan Sampson, Boo Carter, John Henderson, who's had 4 guys in here, and it's probably been, last 2 or 3 months, give or take. So then we've got Zakai Ziegler coming up on Saturday from 11 to 1. One of the few basketball guys that stuck it out, hanging around from last year's team, big time fan favorite. So we're getting close. We expect to probably get really close to selling out on that. So if that is something that interests you, make sure you reach out to the shop either through social media and or give us a shout to get that in place, just in case. We do expect, we usually get about 40 or 50 walk-ups day of event. If we get that this time, I don't know if we'll have the time or tickets for those last 40 or 50.
Gotcha. It's becoming an institution. All right, these diamond balls, you know baseball better than me, Zach. What do you think of their opportunity in the SEC tournament and beyond? We'll visit with you again, hopefully closer to the regionals and all that good stuff. But what do you make of their chances in the SEC tournament?
Yep. I like their chances. I like playing Vandy first over Florida. Of the two options we had, Vanderbilt's offense doesn't really do as much as Florida's offense can do. Need tournament play. Pitching is key to a lot of things, and I like our bullpen. Feel better about it now than I did probably the start of the season. I like their chance. Texas A&M is really good though, so being in the same half as Texas A&M will be interesting to see since we didn't play them in the regular season. Haven't seen a ton of them. I know they've got that Braden Montgomery that he was at Stanford last year. He had a good game against Tennessee in the College World Series at Stanford, and then they've got a couple of young guys that are pretty good contributors. So it'll be interesting if Tennessee gets to A&M, and of course, if you get make it to the championship, if you get a chance against Arkansas or something like that, that's always a nice little rivalry with the coaches there.
Yep. A question on the board by Devin: will we see AJ Russell today?
I think today or tomorrow will be the bet. Obviously you're only guaranteed today and tomorrow, but I think today possibly. But if you don't see him today, I think definitely tomorrow. But I think we will see him at some point in time in this SEC tournament, getting warmed up for the NCAA. Always good to get your Friday night starter back in time for postseason play.
Yeah. All right, buddy. You're killing it at Sports Treasures. Tell people how to get a hold of you and how they can take part in one of the most awesome spaces in Knoxville.
Yeah. Yep. So, like I said, you can reach out to us. Obviously, Facebook, Sports Treasures. On Instagram, we're Sports Treasures TN. Then if you want to call the shop, especially for tickets, things like that, it's 865-688-2273. Like I said, right there off Broadway as well, 4819 North Broadway next to the Big Lots. So come in and see us. Like I said, we're expecting a good day Saturday, and June starts our 35th anniversary. So be on the lookout for some fun stuff there.
35th anniversary. That's pretty awesome, man. Time flies. Just a moment ago, our own Caleb Calhoun was calling me old and dated. So
never did that. Well, I did. That's because
you're young.
Offensive linemen are more important than quarterbacks for a football team. That's like from the 80s.
Let me ask you this. Zach. Would you rather have an elite defensive line, elite offensive line, or elite quarterback?
College or NFL?
College,
probably. I was an O lineman, so probably the O line.
I love
Zach. They make a lot of the good.
I love it. Zach, I appreciate you, buddy. You be safe down there in Hoover. That's a live report. Thanks to Zach at Sports Treasures. Have a fantastic day, everyone. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker.